Hello, my name is Athenia Rodney, CEO and founder of Juneteenth NYC. This is a special invitation for you to attend with Juneteenth NY. We're thrilled to announce that this year's celebration promises to be bigger and better than ever before. Join us for an unforgettable experience filled with a wide array of exciting performances, delightful vendors, mouth-watering food trucks and vendors, an exclusive fashion show, a rally at Barclays Steps, a free bus ride with health drink tastings. Don't miss that. For those of you with little ones, don't worry, we've got you covered also. Juneteenth NY 2023 is the event for all ages. We'll be featuring a dedicated kids zone so that your young ones can join in on the fun. So why wait? Grab your free tickets. Yes, free. It doesn't cost anything, but we do need you to register so that we can prepare for the amount of people that will be in attendance on the weekend. So we look forward for you to go to our website at www.juneteenthny.com, or you can go to our Instagram at JuneteenthNY, like us, follow us, engage with our page. We love to see you participating. It warms my heart. Trust me, it does. And then go to our link tree and you'll get a direct link to register. This will be a monumental occasion. We can't wait to see you there. Thank you and have a good one.
Hello. My name is DJ Ohimaweje of Angel FM Angel TV, representing ABN, Africa and Ghana to be precise. Here is the Elmina Castle. I know we are all observing a special occasion of the Juneteenth, starting 16th to 19th. So I want us to throw light on the history that birthed the Juneteenth celebration all the way from Africa, Ghana, and the Elmina Castle. So let's take you through.
Right, so you welcome to Elmina Castle, probably known. It is St. George's Castle, built by the Portuguese in 1482. The Portuguese were here in 1471. At the time when they were here, they traded with the natives then. But later in 1600, that was when they shifted the attention to human trade or slave trade. With the slavery, the castle was now named or properly known to be dangerous in 1600 with the point of enslaving Africans here. Now, the Portuguese starting the slavery, we're looking at the Dutch, who happened to be here, fought against Portuguese in 1637 and took over the place. They also used the same place here for slavery. They were here for a long time until slavery stopped in 1860 to 1870. When slaves stopped, they also sold this one to the English or the British. And as we talk now, slavery being over, the British ruled the nation. Ghana got independent 6th of March 1957. That was when they also handed everything back to Ghana. So as we talk now, it is in the hands of Ghanaians through the UNESCO's part of it. We're looking at the women who were all divided in terms of the number of attaining the rooms that we have. That's a capacity aspect of it. So through that, then we're talking about 19 women who were not here at that time. But do not forget, all the gates that we have there, that we just walked to one of them. Then it was being gated with a metal wire. And also, the floor that we have, this is the original floor. So we'll go to the next one to see the realities of it there. So this place, this happens to be the largest place in the world. Then we are talking about 150 women who were not here at that time. Now with the 150 women, do not forget, and I still repeat myself, the children here were not counted together with the adults. So including, we are talking about more than 150 women here at that time. Condition at hand, and as I said earlier, all the gates that we have there was being gated with a metal. So the gated door that we have, it happened to be the place where ventilation was coming in. The other way round for ventilation to be is out of the small hole that we have over there. And this is where we have the women not here. Not only that, we also looking at the other aspects of human nature. Relating, vomiting, feces. The women too, we're talking about the menstrual cycle when it comes to the monthly days of menstruation. All these things happen in your wife's body. And also, don't forget that whatever the enslaved Africans were being captured, that was the same thing that was used here for 3 months and more. And with respect to what we put on every day, when it comes in contact with wet things like water, sweating aspect of it, it becomes so weak when it is not being dry. So then, we're looking at the women, the men, and that of the children who were found miraculously naked. And with their nakedness, this happens to be the original floor that is left on at that time. There was the outbreak of disease and more. Some of them died before the ship even arrived in 3 months' time. So that's why we have the class here to remember the sweet. Let's go. The same water here was used to be washing the women that they were raping or abusing. Through that, up there was where the governor stands when it comes to the fountain and selecting of the women. And after being selected, that is when the soldiers took up in to fetch water from here to wash them before they were now taken up to the governor's area through a secret door or a trap door. Let's see from that side. Now, so this side, this happens to be the secret door or the trap door leading to the governor's bedroom. So that was where those who meant to be raped had to walk up to the governor's bedroom. Some of them were found pregnant in times that we have in here. So those who got pregnant, they had a place where they kept those pregnant women until they delivered. But before I go into details in the pregnancy aspect, upon it, when we are talking about the pregnancy symptoms, so that is a woman, they all have different stages of pregnancy symptoms. We're talking about the early aspects, the late aspect of it. Some of them will not even show any symptom at all. By the time you realize she has been better already. With the aspect of those who were not found at the earlier stage, when we talk about the symptoms aspect, the probability of being sold out to a merchant is so high. And taking them from here to the new world, it took about 6 weeks or more to get where they were going. And the point of spending days, weeks, months on board, that's when by chance the symptoms of it start to show up. Now, with the merchant now realizing the pregnant women found on board, he had a perception those pregnant women cannot work in a plantation. Through this, whatever that they get to, those women were left there for them to continue. So leaving those pregnant women there, we ought to ask ourselves two questions. One, what food are they going to eat? And also, the security aspect, how is it going to be? So then, there was the high rate of starvation to death. And also, wild animals like snakes and other things that killed some of them at the time. Coming back to those who were found at the earlier stage, that they had a food that kept them until they delivered. After giving birth, they do have some specific needs. Those children were now separated from their mothers. The mothers were sent back to line to be sewed out. And then the children were now here to be trained at the point of them educating them. So this happens to be the next great children. But we're talking about the mulattoes. And as a result of the introduction of the children here, we are now looking at the Europeans who now wiped away the African culture and then replaced it with the European culture. In the country of Ghana, more or less Africa as well. This happens to be the metaphor or the cannonball that they used to punish the women, that they claimed those women refused to go to the government bedroom when we're talking about the raping part of it. And as a result of them punishing them, they had a chain on top of it. And the chain on top of it was used to shackle them. This is very heavy. With the heaviness aspect, they cannot go anywhere. Do not forget about the condition aspect of nature. Raining, as we're observing now, shining too. And we're also talking about day and night. So raining, shining, day and night, we ought to be here for the punishment will open. Now, all the items that we have here, the materials, the chains that we have here, it is not part of the slave trade. But in the other way around, it also gives an idea about what happened then. Some students in the early part of 2015, they came here to mimic what's happening at the time. And for those what they were doing, these are the materials that they used to cover themselves. They were happening. And the change that we have there was used to restrict their movement. And this happens to be the traditional way of lighting up with oil in them, more or less Africa as well. And that was what they used when they were doing. They had a ways and means to log the gate at that time. They started 6 in the evening to the next day 6 in the morning. When we came up the next day, this place was messed up by the students. Urinating, spitting out ground. Some of them had to even ease themselves here as part of what they were doing. The work we do every day, we need to make sure this place is clean. The cleaners came here to wash everything away. But the point is that 3 days getting to 1 week, the scent of it was still here. So this was give us the idea about the condition our college went through with the same aspect without being clean for 3 months and more. Before we go, let's listen. This happens to be the original metal bar that time that was used for the windows and that of the gates. But because most of them are damaged, we have the wooden ones here to replace it. Now we ought to ask ourselves a question here. The question is, if we are looking at this in terms of the 21st century, sea breeze making sure metal gets blasted, the question we need to ask ourselves is, what was the original size of this at the time that they got it from the 14th to the 16th century? Happens to be the entrance. It leads to the door of no return. So here It was purposely meant for the enslaved women who survived in the dungeons at the time that the ship came in for them to be taken to the New World. So right here was where they had to walk down to the ship. Then there was some step down there, but as we talk now, the step is no more. So we are going to use where they kept the men. You see Dove Mountain. Now, in this place, this happens to be the point where the enslaved Africans who were being bought by the merchants, here was where they were being branded with hot metal on the chest as a way of naming or identifying them before they took them straight to the ship. Now let's see the Dove Mountain.
Yeah, identification.
Right, there's one step down. One step down, and then there's one step to help you to pray. And also that was to help you. All the enslaved Africans were chained while they went through this door that was seen over there. We're going there very soon. But before we get to see the door of no return right there, this place as we all stand now, then it happens to be the emotional aspect or the affective aspect of it. The reason being the emotional aspect is that this place, it happens to be the only opportunity or the only time where if there were families within or friends, here was where they can or they could see themselves here for the last time before they were taken to the New World. And as a result of seeing your friend, your family person, we are looking at a psychological aspect. Or looking at the base of what is going to happen to them in the other way around. So then there was the high rate of committing of suicide. So we're going to see the door of no return. Take 5 steps before you reach that way. Now, what we have here, this side, this happens to be the door of no return. Now, with what we've seen over there, with the exception of the metal door which has been restored, whatever thing that we've seen over there happens to be the original side of the direction. The point is this. No matter who the enslaved Africans were, they made sure everybody went to the door that was seen over there. So what they did was, the food that they gave them was only to sustain them. And also, with the condition that they went through the dungeon for 3 months and more, no matter who they were at that time, they will be able to fit to the door that was seen over there. So then, the sea happened to be closer to the door. By nature, it has receded and it keeps receding. So they use the small boat to carry the enslaved Africans to the big ship. At the point of taking them to the New World, we're now looking at the merchants who had a mindset that taking the enslaved Africans from here to the New World, it happens to be a change of environment. And being a change of environment, the probability of some of them dying on their way home could be high. So if they buy one enslaved African, they had more than that. But the point of getting more, it makes the ship overloaded. So on their way home, if there was shortage of food or anything happening to the ship, quickly, some of them were just turned to the sea for them to move on. And also, all the enslaved Africans were chained while they were taking them to a new world. So on their way going, The more they are stored, the more the ship capsizes. The more the ship capsizes, there is a twist of this metal key on the hand, the neck, or the leg. Don't forget, this is a skin, so soft. Anything twisted in the metal form, there will be issue of it. And the amazing thing that we're forgetting about is the sea breeze when it comes to metal getting rusted. So this rusted metal on the hand, whilst at the same time get twisted. And the more or less, the infection aspect of this rusted metal. Now the history of slavery, those who died were more than those who survived. So that is the reason we have the flowers, the snacks, and other valuable items brought in mostly by the African Americans as their way of remembering and congregation for their soul to rest in peace. Been welcome to Door for 10 with a question once again. You have to watch your head when it's coming back. Those two places, it happened to be cells. Now we need to ask ourselves a question. The question is, which what happened in that atom? The answer will yet to come with when we get there to do the comparison. Now the exception of that place being the cells, all the rooms that we have down here was where the 600 men, excluding the children, were divided to be fought inside. And the point is that right in the middle, now the museum. Then it happens to be the church. So the church being there, the side by side of the church was where the men were. When the Portuguese were here, they were Catholic. Happened to be Roman Catholic. So that was a Catholic church. Now, in 1637, the Dutch were the second Europeans who fought against Portuguese and took over the place. They also used the same castle for slavery until slavery stopped in 1860 to 1870. That was when they sold this one to the English or the British in 1872. The English used this place for administrative at a point of ruling the nation. When the Dutch were here, they happened to be Protestants who protested against the church. So they now converted the Catholic Church by the Portuguese as their way of auctioning or selling the enslaved Africans in there. So that was the slave market. Let's see this out. Now, what we have here, this is written in Old Dutch language. It is written in a memory of a man who died and was buried here. His name is Ted. Now this man Ted happens to be the last Director General for the West Indies Company. And when we are talking about the West Indies Company, it's one of the biggest companies in the land of slavery. Now he came from Zealand. Currently we're talking about Zealand to part of Holland or Netherlands. So what happened is, this man Ted was taking care over the north and south coast of Africa. He first arrived here, that was on the 16th of January 1758, and died on 12th March, the same year 1758. When he died here, he happens to be 41 years old. So when he died here, there was a pastor here. His name is A. Andres, who knew this man then, wrote a tribute about him to be a good man and then God-fearing at a point of slave trade. We're going to do comparison here. Yeah, this place, it happened to be the cell that was meant for the European soldiers. The soldiers who went beyond the rules of this place. Some of them got drunk, misbehaved, and a whole lot of it. So anybody who was found culprit, the person was brought here to be punished. But on this side, the punishment being over the way out of this place. The gate are closed, happened to be the original metal gate at that time. So Just look at the spacing aspect of it. Do your own imagination. How well will this building legislature out? Let's just finish on this. Buildings over there, then it happened to be the watchtower for the soldiers for protecting the place. When the British took over, they converted that place to be a prison for the introducing some of the great place of Ashanti. We have to conquer the because and none of the Ashanti. We were here, but later they exiled them to Seychelles Island, somewhere near Madagascar in the Indian Ocean. Building that we have out there, the height that we have out there, chapel, and these are the colors of the the square diagram that we have down here. The food estate in the middle. The shadow of it is short and then where we have the coconut planting, the sea water was coming in. And then the garbage over there, the bridge there. We break that one down and that one for that. Right, so we saw the church of the Portuguese down there. This place is down the Dutch Reformed Church. But the point is that beneath the church was where the church went Right, so this happens to be the governor's kitchen. Yes. Now, we ought to do some small comparison. Just look at the floor of the kitchen. And that will compare it to exactly. Do your own analysis.
The kitchen therefore. And the ventilation point in the
Check it out. Listen. Right, so this is the bedroom or the sleeping room. let's see this side. One step down.
All these were here.
The lighting system?
Yeah.
No. More like they use the oil lights.
Yeah.
So this place, this is the living room or the sitting room. And then we have the dining room. You can just imagine women were being entertained to attend the rest of class. This is nice. This place, it is the boardroom or a conference room. Should there be any discussion, this is where we do it. As we talk now, it's a place for exhibition of paintings. So you have a quick look, you can do so. You don't need that. Right? Let's see this side too. Let's see this side. Interesting. And then this place, this is where the governor stands when it comes to any command or anything information down there. Yes. And I was supposed to be seeing the Cape Coast Castle from the last point of the sea. This looks true. It looks too much cloudy today. So you can see it. And I will be wishing you a safe journey to destination. Do the risk for this. So you want to have a look at the shop to place it.
Greetings, family. My name is Catherine Ann Mbali Green Johnson. I'm the daughter of Sarah, who is the daughter of Annie, who is the daughter of Josephine, and who's the daughter of Lucinda. I say their names to honor my maternal line as we begin to talk about the legacy of our people and their unacknowledged contributions to the wealth and wholeness of this country. My life's purpose is to manifest resources in abundance for creative communities across the African diaspora. I do this work as a cultural curator, an artist, as an arts administrator, and as a community advocate. And today, I invite you into a deeper aspect of my life's work, which is the title of today's presentation, Reparations: A Path to Healing. Understanding the historical context of systemic racism, systemic oppression, and racial injustice is crucial for comprehending the case for reparations. It provides a lens through which we can recognize the deep-rooted and long-lasting effects of past atrocities on marginalized communities. By acknowledging the historical context, we gain insight into the intergenerational trauma, economic disparities, and social inequities that persist today. Examining the historical context allows us to understand how racism and has systemically disadvantaged African Americans and perpetuated cycles of poverty, limited access to education and healthcare, and hindered wealth accumulation. It reveals the deliberate policies and practices, such as slavery, Jim Crow laws, redlining, and mass incarceration that have disproportionately affected African Americans and contributed to their ongoing marginalization. Moreover, comprehending the historical context helps us to recognize that the injustices inflicted upon African Americans were not isolated incidents, but rather well-calculated forms of oppression. It highlights the intentional barriers that have hindered progress and denied opportunities for advancement. Understanding this history provides a moral and ethical imperative for reparations. It allows us to recognize that the effects of past wrongs are not simply remnants of the past, but they continue to shape the present realities and lived experiences of African Americans. Reparations in this context can be seen as a necessary step towards addressing historical injustices, rectifying systemic imbalances, and fostering a more equitable society. By understanding the historical context, we gain a deeper appreciation of the urgency and necessity of reparations. It challenges us to confront the uncomfortable truths of our past and take responsibility for the ongoing consequences. Ultimately, this understanding serves as a catalyst for change and fuels the fight for reparations as a means to achieve justice, equality, and healing for African American communities. In this next slide, before we begin, I want to ground us in this beautiful poem. This poem is an invitation to a brave space written by Mickey Scott Page Jones. I use this poem in my presentations to help to ground us because there will be some hard things that we hear. There may be some triggering effects. So we want to make sure that we are approaching this conversation as in a brave way. And so the poem goes as such. Together we will create brave space because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in a world, a real world. We carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side. Next up in our grounding exercise before we get into all of the details for the day is a deep look into the writings by Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde's book, The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House, challenges us to critically examine the systems and structures that have perpetuated inequality and injustice. It urges us to consider alternative approaches in our fight for reparations. Lorde emphasizes that the need to avoid replicating oppressive methods when seeking liberation. We must be mindful of the tools we use to dismantle the systems of oppression that have marginalized African Americans. Let's weave Lorde's ideas into our presentation today by highlighting the importance of intersectionality and inclusivity. We need to recognize that reparations encompass not only monetary compensation, but also the dismantling of systemic racism and the creation of inclusive spaces for marginalized voices. Lorde also challenges us to go beyond the traditional methods of seeking justice. We need to incorporate her insights to emphasize the importance of amplifying marginalized voices, centering lived experiences, and embracing diverse perspectives within the reparations movement. And let's not forget her call for coalition building and solidarity. We should emphasize the need to collaborate between communities and movements, recognizing that our collective liberation is interconnected. Lorde's work reminds us that to truly dismantle oppressive systems, we must challenge the very foundations on which they were built. Her words will guide us in presenting reparations as a transformative movement, advocating for systemic change, and promoting healing and justice for African diasporic communities. Now, let's define reparations. What does it mean? What is it? Here you see on your screen the Webster's Dictionary definition of reparations. It is the making of amends for a wrong one has done. Simple. It's by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. Very quick and simple. For our definition, as defined by NCOBRA, we are designing what it means for us. And so it means to us a process of repairing, healing, and restoring a people injured because of their group identity and in violation of fundamental human rights by governments, corporations, institutions, and families. Those groups have those groups that have been injured have the right to obtain a form of the government, corporation, institution, or families responsible for the injuries that which they need repair to heal themselves. In addition to being a demand for justice, it is a principle of international human rights law. This is as defined by the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, NCOBRA. NCOBRA is a mass-based organization for the sole purpose of obtaining reparations for African descendants in the United States. Their founding meeting in September 26 of 1987 was convened with the sole purpose of broadening the base of support for the long-standing reparations movement. We are very excited to share this information with you. Please continue to research NCOBRA and stay involved in their processes. Next, I invite you all to journal with us, to answer a few questions for yourself that you can reflect back to. Does not matter what station in life you are, does not matter what race you are, we can all reflect on these few questions, answer one of them or all of them. But I ask that you journal on this. Number one, why are reparations needed for people of African descent? 2, what does reparations mean to you and your family? 3, how has slavery impacted you and your family? 4, Who needs to be involved in these conversations? And 5, what does solidarity mean to you as we talk about this topic? Next, we are going to go into defining how we know it's reparations and not something else. So I'm going to be very clear with these 5 definitions as described by the Movement for Black Lives. Reparations are an official acknowledgement, an apology for harm, public education or memorial about the harm, and compensation to a specific defined group of individuals harmed by a violation, including descendants, as well as family and community members of individuals directly targeted for harm who were adversely affected, and action to restore individuals harmed to the position they were in before the initial harm occurred, and changes to laws, institutions, and systems that aimed to ensure that harm will not happen again. Next, we talk about our National African American Reparations Commission, NARC, another organization that was formed to help galvanize community and fight for reparations as a whole. NARC was established in April of 2015, and it is comprised of a group of distinguished professionals from across the country with outstanding accomplishments in the fields of law and medicine, journalism, academia, history, civil rights, and social justice advocacy. Here, they're all united in a common commitment to fight for reparatory justice, compensation, and restoration of African American communities that were plundered by the historical crimes of slavery, segregation, and colonialism, and that continue to be victimized by the legacies of slavery and apartheid. Here you see the 10-point strategy plan that was developed by the National African American Reparations Committee. You see here, I won't go into all of them for the sake of time, but you can also research this on your own. But in the 10-point plan, you see an apology in Ma'afa Institute, repatriation or rights of repatriation to returning to the countries of our origins as we so find them, land, the right to land for social and economic development, funds for cooperative enterprises and socially responsible and entrepreneurial development, health and wellness resources, education, housing and wealth generation, information and comms infrastructures, and lastly, criminal justice system reform and sacred sites and monuments. Next, the next institution we're going to look at is the African American Redress Networks. AARN supports organizations on the grassroots, regional, and state levels in promoting reparations. This group has come together to document and help support local grassroots organizers who sue their local municipalities on human rights violations experienced by slavery. Their work addresses the United States historical racial injustices by facilitating interdisciplinary research, capacity building, education, and advocacy. As you can see here, some of the human rights violations that these townships across the country have been able to successfully sue towards are slavery, historical misrepresentation, race riots, death penalty, theft of labor, lynchings, murders, mass incarceration, medical experimentation, massacres, segregation, wrongful incrimination and execution, and police brutality. This group, which was founded by Justin Hansford out of Howard University's Thurgood Marshall Center for Peace and Justice. One of the case studies that the African American Redress Network puts into our purview is the case of Evanston, Illinois. In Evanston, under former Alderwoman Robin Ruth Simmons' leadership, Evanston became the first city in the United States to pass a reparations resolution in 2019 for Black residents whose families were affected by research found in their local clerk's office, where multiple instances of racial housing discrimination cases were uncovered that were perpetuated by the city of Evanston. It was found in this investigation that in the 1920s, elected officials began approving permit applications to move homes to the Fifth Ward. Most of those homes were owned by Black families. By the 1930s, the United States federal government convened the Homeowners Loan Corporation, HOLC, which brought together mortgage lenders, developers, and real estate professionals across the country to design color-coded maps designating the creditworthiness of certain neighborhoods. This process is called redlining. This now redlined community was labeled as hazardous and subsequently denied FHA mortgages. Due to this calculated segregation process, the neighborhood that Black people now were forced to live in was disinvested and stripped of neighborhood schools, infrastructural resources, and access to quality health care, to name a few. By 1940, 84% of African American households in Evanston were located within the Fifth Ward. And today, the Fifth Ward remains racially segregated. As an effort to repair this harmful act, in March 2021, African American Redress Network pledged legal support to the reparations efforts in Evanston, Illinois. The city council here was preparing to vote on a local reparations restorative housing program, and resulted in the city council voting 8-1 on March 21st of 2021 to approve the reparations program. This resulted in qualifying households being awarded $25,000, up to $25,000 for down payments or home repairs. Despite the approval by the city council, this ordinance is being threatened with legal challenges. Despite that, in April of this year, 2023, the Reparations Committee unanimously recommended the inclusion of a fourth option for beneficiaries receiving payment through the housing program. They are now eligible for direct cash payments to beneficiaries who qualify. This is one step at providing reparations to those who are affected by housing discrimination. The African American Redress Network continues to work with the city of Evanston to create a path to Black wealth generation over the next 20 years. Now, we want to take a really close look at reparations processes happening across the country, across the African diaspora. From Asheville, North Carolina, Detroit, Michigan, St. Louis, Missouri, Amherst, Massachusetts, and Boston, Massachusetts, cities across the country are trying to repair harms caused by institutional racism. In San Francisco, a reparations committee is seeking payments proposed of $5 million to every eligible Black resident. A final report that includes board feedback is due out this month, and according to San Francisco African American Advisory Committee, it looks pretty good as it comes to the recommendations here. This imperative is growing across the country. In this map, you can see across the United States commissions and task force that are forming in the states of New York, New Jersey, California, Washington, D.C., and many others that are being inspired to join the effort daily. Here we see a recent highlight in a long-standing movement for reparations in the Caribbean. Labor leader Clive Lewis has called on the UK government to enter negotiations with Caribbean leaders on paying reparations for Britain's role in slavery following a historic announcement by the Trevelyan family. In his advocacy effort, He pointed to the recent announcement by the Trevelyan's, an aristocratic British family who made history by traveling to the Caribbean to publicly publicly apologize for the ownership of more than 1,000 enslaved Africans and committed to paying reparations. Lewis states in this article, they did what no British government has ever done before. They apologized for their ancestors' part in the exploitation of the 1,000 slaves they owned on 6 plantations. He then goes on to say, they acknowledge the financial and cultural advantage that this generated for them and urge the British government, as I will today, to enter into meaningful negotiations with the government of the Caribbeans in order to make appropriate reparations. Lewis also added that the announcements by the Trevelyan family had opened the door for this debate just a little wider. Next up, you see a global effort for the reparations movement. There was a conference held in Accra, Ghana, and keynoted by President of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa. As you can see, my dog is very excited about this incredible movement across the country. So I hope you enjoy her 2 cents in this topic. For the Accra delegation highlights the legacies of the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and ongoing harms. It calls for the United Nations Permanent Forum on the People of African Descent to convene on a global summit for former colonial powers on the issues of reparations. And it calls for the development of prosperous economies through reformation of global systems and structures, and the return of stolen artifacts. It also calls the United Nations to extend the United Nations Decade for People of African Descent and for a process of acknowledgement and healing for the roles that both Europe and Africans played in the transatlantic slave trade. Next, I want us to all understand the opposition here. So, as we take a look as where we stand in this country, in the United States, you see the sentiments on reparations across the country. Unfortunately, only 30% of adult Americans support reparations. Of that 30%, who believe in redress, 77% are African Americans, compared with 18% being white Americans. However, family, we should not let that dismay this fight moving forward. As you can see here, the racial wealth gap in this country is wide and broad. The median household net worth by race in education, as stated in this form, for white households post-college, is averaging around $455,000 per household, as compared to $141,000 for a Black American household. We cannot wait. We cannot sit back and allow for the opposition to overcloud our judgment in pushing forward for reparations. We must be able to compete, and we must be able to get ahead in this world. And reparations is a path forward. So just to arm you with some of the conversations around the opposition to redress, you'll see things. I come across many conversations around the country will fail if we do this, because they owe us so much money. Reparations will be more divisive for an already polarized community. Many things are said in opposition, but I want you to be clear in where those comments are rooted in. This opposition to redress is linked directly to the maintenance of white supremacy in at least 2 critical ways: the failure of education regarding our nation's history, and the willful misperceptions of the existence of the wealth gap, its size, and the federal government's role in its preservation. The information that I'm providing to you in this presentation and the subsequent slides that follow unabashedly strikes down the most common misconceptions about reparations. So please take notes so that you're armed with knowledge when you're when there's a conversation that bump up against this concept of us as a people moving forward for healing. In the next slide, you're going to see a short video on how this can be achieved and precedents across the country.
Calls for racial justice and equality are growing louder in America. With those calls comes a renewed interest in reparations. Reparations are the act of making amends to someone or a group of people who have been wronged. Germany paid billions of dollars in reparations to Holocaust victims or their families and to Israel after the Nazi atrocities of World War II. And in 1988, the U.S. paid more than 80,000 Japanese Americans who were held in internment camps during World War II. They each got $20,000. But African Americans have never gotten reparations for their 246 years of slavery. Lawmakers have introduced bills in Congress to study reparations and whether it's possible, but most have never gotten very far. In 2008, the House of Representatives issued an apology for slavery. And in 2019, bills to study and develop a proposal for reparations were introduced into both houses of Congress. But the legislation languished. Recently, there's been renewed interest, like the Harriet Tubman Community Investment Act, which the Maryland General Assembly is considering. The Brookings Institution says it could be a possible blueprint to what reparations could look like for Black Americans. Under this act, the descendants of slaves in Maryland could receive the following repayments. Tracing the descendants of slaves will be one major challenge. Unlike victims of the Holocaust and Japanese internment camps, there are not a lot of paper trails for the descendants of slavery. The census didn't count Black Americans until 1870, and unlike immigrant groups who have their history documented at Ellis Island, there's no central historical database for the descendants of slaves.
So as you can see, family, there are many, many ways in which there were precedents set for reparations. There are ways forward. Most of those movements that you saw in that video had lots of opposition. However, they moved forward because it was the right thing to do. You saw that in Germany in 1952, the German government paid $822 million to Holocaust survivors, and many other examples. And then also in the United States, under the Obama administration, more recently, $25 million in 2015 was dedicated to Holocaust survivors from the United States government as well. It can be done. And this is how it can be done. We need your help. So our call to action for you as a community, we have a huge campaign for Juneteenth and the reparations movement. Week 1 focuses on the basics for reparations. Week 2, there's teachings, all sorts of things that you can get involved with. You can visit the Movement for Black Lives at the website you see listed on today's presentation. So you can educate yourself and arm yourself in ways in which you can get involved in this fight. You can also visit my website. I've done 4 episodes interviewing many of the people I mentioned in today's presentation, such as Justin Hansford from the Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center at Howard University, as well as former Alderwoman Robin Ruth Simmons for her work in Evanston, Illinois. So please visit the website to arm yourself with that knowledge and watch the interviews so you can learn more. And then we also have here, you can join me as I kick off my monthly podcast series titled The Art of Reparations, conversations on art, activism, and reparations for African diasporic communities across the globe. You can register at katherineandbali.com to join in the conversations. We kick off these conversations on June 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you there. And family, before we leave today, I thank you so much for your time and energy. And I want to leave with just a beautiful song sung by Ayanna Gregory, who is the daughter of Dick Gregory, our beautiful leader, who has passed on, but left us with lots of wisdom and knowledge and fortitude towards this fight. And so Ayana will end us today with a beautiful rendition of Lift of Every Voice and Sing, not just in English, but in Kiswahili. May this song heal you. May it be a contribution into your advocacy efforts. I thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future. Good night.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that a dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on until victory is won. In Kosi Sikeleli, Africa, Malupa kan Yesu Ponduluayo, Izwai mitandazo yetu, Inkosi Sikelela, Tina Lusapuluayo, Woza moya, woza moya, woza moya, woza moya, woza moya. Oh, yingwele usisikelela, Tina Lusapuluayo.